It wasn't just another ending. When the final scene of Nothing But You faded into silence, something in the air shifted, a strange ache, like watching two people pretend to part when the truth was that neither really wanted to. Fans around the world felt it before they understood it. The way Leo Wu's eyes lingered just a heartbeat too long. The tremble in Zhao Jinmai's smile that didn't belong to her character. It was too real, too raw, too heartbreakingly human. It wasn't just acting, it was emotion, stripped of rehearsal, leaking through the cracks of professionalism. For weeks after the finale, the internet buzzed with theories. Clips were replayed in slow motion. Every pause, every breath, every blink was dissected frame by frame. But the truth was simpler and far more powerful. Their goodbye wasn't scripted. It was felt. Because somewhere between camera takes and rehearsals, Leo Wu and Zhao Jinmai had built something fragile and pure, not necessarily love, but something dangerously close to it. It was that rare chemistry that doesn't fade when the director yells cut. It stays in the air, heavy and electric, like static before a storm. When Zhao Jinmai's character smiled for the last time, her eyes glistened with a tenderness too unpolished to be fiction. And Leo Wu, usually so composed, looked as if he'd forgotten where the camera was. His voice cracked, barely noticeable, but real enough to make millions hold their breath. Even the production crew later admitted that the final take carried an energy none of them could replicate. It was as if, in that moment, the characters vanished and only Leo and Jinmai remained, saying goodbye not just to the story, but to the little world they had created together. On social media, fans began posting side-by-side shots of their earlier interviews and that final scene. The resemblance was uncanny, the same quiet longing, the same unspoken words hanging between them. They look like two people trying to act like they're okay, one fan wrote. But they're not. And maybe that was the truth. Because when you spend months breathing the same emotions, memorizing not just lines but heartbeats, it's impossible to walk away untouched. Leo Wu once mentioned in an interview, "Some scenes stay with you. Some emotions don't fade." He didn't name which scenes, he didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Even after the drama ended, their names refused to separate. Variety shows replayed their behind-the-scenes moments, laughter shared too easily, quiet glances exchanged off-cue, the way his gaze always found her first in a crowd. Zhao Jinmai, usually playful and bright, often softened in his presence. There was comfort there, not performance, but familiarity. The kind of ease that only happens when two people understand each other in silence. During one particular interview, a fan caught something extraordinary. The host jokingly asked Leo Wu what it felt like to say goodbye to someone like Zhao Jinmai, and for a fraction of a second, he hesitated. His smile faltered, his eyes flickered downward, and when he finally answered, his voice was softer than usual. "Some goodbyes aren't really goodbyes," he said. And that one sentence was enough to send the internet spiraling. Zhao Jinmai, too, carried traces of that final day in her later appearances. In one photo shoot, she wore the same hair ribbon from the drama's closing scene, a detail no one expected her to keep. When fans pointed it out, she simply laughed and said, "It just felt right." But fans knew better. Some things you don't wear by accident. As the months went on, both actors continued to grow, different projects, different worlds, but something about them still felt parallel. When Leo Wu took on a more serious role, fans noticed that one emotional scene mirrored the exact expression he had during their goodbye. When Zhao Jinmai shot a film that required deep emotional restraint, her tone, her pauses, her glances all carried faint echoes of him. It was as if their emotions from Nothing But You had bled into real life, quietly shaping the way they both told stories afterward. People say the camera never lies. But what it captured between Leo and Jinmai wasn't just truth, it was memory. You could see it in the way he reached for her hand just half a second too soon, or how she turned toward him before the cue. Their bodies remembered things their minds were trying to forget. And maybe that's why that last scene hit so hard. It wasn't an ending for the audience, it was an ending for them. The weight in their eyes, the stillness after the final line, it was the ache of two souls who knew they just lived something rare, and would never find it again quite the same way. Behind the scenes, a few crew members later described the final filming day. The set was quiet, unusually so. Between takes, Zhao Jinmai reportedly stood by herself, gazing at the ground with a faraway look, while Liu Wu stayed a few steps away, watching her with that same unreadable expression fans knew too well. When the director called cut for the last time, she smiled, but tears fell anyway. Liu hesitated before approaching her, as if unsure whether to comfort her as his character or as himself. In the end, he didn't say a word. He just stood beside her, letting silence do what words couldn't. And that was the moment fans later described as too perfect to be fiction. Because real emotion, when caught on camera, has a gravity you can't recreate. It lingers. It haunts. It makes you wonder where acting ends and feeling begins. Even now, when fans rewatch that final scene, it's hard not to feel that familiar ache. The way his voice softened on her name, the tremble in her breath, it's all too intimate. Too human. And when the credits roll, the silence afterward feels like heartbreak itself. In the months that followed, both stars avoided questions about their dynamic. But the universe, in its playful cruelty, kept binding them together. Brand events, magazine features, endorsement campaigns, their names kept appearing side by side, like echoes refusing to fade. Once, during a live broadcast, Leo accidentally mentioned a quote from the drama, then quickly smiled as if realizing what he'd said. Fans caught it instantly. He still remembers, someone commented. Maybe he did. Maybe she did too. Because certain stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling. They live quietly in the pauses, in the songs they share, in the unspoken glances that still find each other through crowded rooms. And that's what makes their goodbye so unforgettable. It wasn't just a scripted farewell, it was a genuine release. A moment where fiction collided with reality so perfectly that neither could tell where one began or the other ended. The heartbreak was real because the connection had been real. In one fan theory that went viral, someone wrote, "The reason their goodbye felt like a breakup is because, in some ways, it was. Not between characters, but between two people who found something pure in pretending and lost it when the cameras stopped." It was poetic, maybe even romanticized, but perhaps not entirely wrong. Because that's what happens when two souls meet through art. They borrow pieces of each other for a while, voices, glances, laughter, and when it's time to let go, it feels like losing something you never really owned. And even now, when Liu Wu looks out from the stage lights, or Zhao Jinmai laughs during an interview, there's a trace of that memory still flickering somewhere beneath their smiles, a softness that doesn't belong to today, but to a moment once lived too vividly to fade. Their goodbye wasn't meant to shatter hearts. It just revealed something that had always been there, the simple, human truth that love, real or acted, always leaves an echo. So fans keep watching, searching, remembering. Because somewhere between real and real, between fiction and feeling, Liu Wu and Zhao Jinmai left behind a heartbeat that refuses to stop. And maybe that's the real reason their final scene felt like a breakup. Because maybe, in the quietest corners of their hearts, it was. Weeks after filming wrapped, the set stood empty, the court, the bench, the locker room where so many quiet conversations had unfolded. The crew had gone, the cameras stored away, but the air still felt heavy with memory. Sometimes, people said, you could almost hear laughter echoing faintly, like a ghost that refused to leave. Zhao Jinmai returned one evening, unannounced. She walked slowly through the space, fingertips brushing against the walls. The silence greeted her like an old friend. For a moment, she could almost hear his voice, calm, teasing, familiar. She smiled through the ache. Some places remember more than people do. Across the city, Liu Wu sat in a cafe corner, flipping through his old script. His pages were filled with tiny handwritten notes, her laughter cues, her favorite takes, his reminders to slow down and listen. When he closed the script, he found a folded note tucked between two pages. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Just 3 words, "Don't forget this." He didn't. He couldn't. Later that night, he posted a picture of the empty court. The caption was short, "Some stories don't end, they just rest." Within minutes, fans flooded the comments with tears and theories, because somehow, everyone knew who he was really talking to. And maybe that's all it was, not love, not regret, but something rarer. A quiet promise between two souls who once shared the same heartbeat in a world made of cameras and scripts. Something that would keep living, softly, where the real had ended. And in that unspoken space between memory and make-believe, their story lingers, fragile yet eternal. Leo Wu and Zhao Jinmai may have walked off the same set, but their footsteps still echo in each other's silence. Maybe that's the real reason fans can't let go, because deep down, they feel it too. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the way her voice trembled on that last goodbye, none of it felt rehearsed. It was too raw, too human, too true. Now, every time a scene resurfaces, it's as if the universe rewinds, pulling them back to that court, that glance, that moment where fiction and feeling became one. Some loves never ask to be named, they just breathe quietly in the spaces between takes, in the pauses before goodbye. And maybe that's where Leo and Zhao's story lives, not in the past, not on the screen, but in that timeless in-between, where two hearts once met and never really said farewell.